ShareRocket is a social media ratings company. Founded the company 3.5 years ago, really with a vision to measure social audiences in marketplaces. Many very similar to the way that Nielsen sort of measures a DMA in terms of television audience and viewership, and ComScore sort of has a similar paradigm for digital metrics. There was a big opportunity to do that in the local marketplace because no one had come to the table with a similar solution. So we measure social audiences in local media with very much the same market-based approach.
I'm developing a media entrepreneurship class for next spring. What are the challenges as an entrepreneur when you start up a company like this?
Specifically for the media business? A lot of entrenched thinking. We're talking about an industry that arguably is, 70 plus years old, and broadcasters, in particular, the type of media that we're measuring is a two-way conversation. Broadcasters are used to having a tower and sending a message out of that tower and maybe seeing the audience at a special event a couple times a year. Social's changed all of that. It's now a dialogue. It's now a conversation with your audience. And, that's a hard concept. Even today, 6+ years into really, media embracing social as a channel, it's still a challenge for even executives to kind of understand this dynamic change of what's really happened in this two-way discussion.
Yeah, and what's at the foundation of that change? The interaction between broadcasters and audience?
Well, I think it's maybe even deeper than that. I think that broadcasters had a point of view that they owned the air, they owned the channels of this communication, and now that's been disintermediated by our phones and the various platforms that exist, a finger push away. And it's really changed the balance of that power equation. And now the audience has a lot more control because they get to determine where they invest their attention. And I think the dynamics have been, here's our channel. The three big networks going all the way back into the 60s and 70s, the big three networks were the options, and it was destination television. And now broadcasters and publishers have to compete for that attention. And it's just a fundamental shift.
I've also been looking at what Dynamic Signal is doing with employee advocacy in a broader industry sense. Is this a piece of that, how broadcast employees really share their brand?
It is. In a pure sense, I'll use a local television station as the example here. We measure the brand itself, which has the majority, in most cases, the majority of the audience attached to that main brand. We also measure the sub-brands like weather and sports and the morning shows that may have their own communities that they've developed in these channels. But we're really focused, and where we've seen a lot of culture change in the last 3 years is we also measure the journalists that are contributing their audience, their content to the discussion and the conversation, and they're really a strong advocate for their station brands. In many cases, we've got some markets where as much as 30% of the social equity of a station rests in the talent as a whole, and that's a big chunk of a local TV station or a local publisher's social equity. And we're helping our clients help their journalists understand how they can move that conversation along and promote the brand at the same time.
And as I understand it, you've developed a proprietary social equity index?
We have. We actually just received our first patent awards on some of that technology and that concept. And it really, in the simplest terms, ShareRocket will take all of the activity of journalists individually, and we let them compete amongst themselves. So, all the local journalists in a market are kind of competing against each other And then we can also transfer that social equity up to the mothership or to the main station, and all of that equity is attributed to those brands. And our clients get to see a real-time index of how they're performing. So that's helping them manage their social better in a real-time way.
Is there a feedback loop then to sort of best practices for those employees?
We try to build some insights into the tool. We train our clients on how to tease those insights out of the product itself. So it's not just a score. We kind of call it a score and more. We teach our clients how to pull tactical insights out of the tool, how to pull strategic insights for those folks that are kind of in a senior level, maybe even a corporate level. They can sort of see how their stations are doing strategically as well compared to the competitors. But we do drill all the way down to the journalists, and we have a social scorecard that we create that is really a benchmark against the top 5 in the market, and they can see how they're doing against the top 5 talent in the market. And it's got a lot of depth in terms of which platforms should they really be leveraging for the most engagement, how many times a day, how many posts a day should I be doing on each platform. And they can really see based on what the leaders are doing in those markets to help shape their behavior. They're no longer having to guess how many posts a day. They can see what the leaders are doing in their market and sort of mirror their behavior after that.
I read on your website, and our research here certainly seems to back this up, that Facebook is really the foundation for a strategy?
Well, it's interesting. If you put your news journalism hat on, Twitter's an amazing tool to disseminate news. It's a broadcast tool. It's not an engagement tool necessarily. And so we think Twitter has a place in the newsroom. Instagram obviously has it's an up and coming platform for stations, branding, and journalists to build audience. But you're right, Facebook represents anywhere from 95 to 97% of the engagement that happens in a local TV market. So we've been sharing these insights with our clients, and they're seeing that their return on effort in terms of how much time they put into social is better served. Obviously use Twitter for what it's good at, but put your attention on curating your Facebook audience and building posts that are highly engaging on that platform.
We've seen in our branding of the School of Communication that, for example, recently we did a Facebook Live event that didn't get that much traction in the middle of the day when it aired, but the recording got a lot of views. Is Facebook Live something that really feeds back into that score?
It's huge. So our scores are based on engagement. As I mentioned, our view of the world is the currency of social is an audience. It's engagement of that audience. And so Facebook, for whatever reason, has given a lot of favor to Facebook Live in terms of organic reach. And I think with your experiment, or at least that broadcast and those results you saw, are very typical. Facebook Live is some of the most engaging content that we measure across all of our clients' platforms. And so I think there's no secret Facebook has been encouraging publishers and broadcasters in particular to embrace more Facebook Live content. And I think they're encouraging that even more by giving preferential reach to those types of posts.
You mentioned organic. How do you factor into all of this the paid boosted posts?
We looked at building some algorithmic tools to help us detect paid posts. We have a point of view that, the way social works, if you've got really bad content and you boost it, you're still not going to get any engagement, right? But if you take really good content and you boost it, all you're really doing is increasing your reach for more opportunities of people engaging with your really good content. So we don't think it's as sort of a religious of a discussion as a lot of our clients think it may be, because you're really talking about, at the end of the day, highly engaging, inherently engaging content that you're just exposing it to more eyeballs. You're not really gaming the system. You're just buying more reach. And we think that, separating paid content from organic content really is a side discussion. It's like, how much content was or how much engagement did you have around a particular post, and how much of your target audience saw it? So we've sort of taken an agnostic view as paid versus organic.
So in terms of engagement, nuts and bolts, we're really looking at likes, comments, and more recently reaction data.
Reactions, and then the holy grail, which is where all of your reach amplification comes from, which is the shared content. So, a lot of our clients have been tailoring their strategies around content that might not necessarily have the most likes in a period of time, but the most shares, because they realize they get more organic reach, more new eyeballs to see their brand and to see their content. So we've seen a shift since the last couple big Facebook algorithm tweaks. We've seen a shift of people really focusing on shareability as a key metric.
In terms of this whole conversation about engagement, I think it would seem to me, from the perspective of broadcasters, that it would be easier for them to understand the value of reach, because that's been a currency for them all along, but a little tougher to kind of drill into this idea of relationship building that happens within engagement, really developing communities of interest, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a foreign concept to traditional broadcasters. I think the way we're framing up the discussion is, what's the value of all of that engagement to an advertiser, because they're way further along in their thinking in terms of valuing engaged content. And we sort of share the story of engagement value from an advertiser's perspective and how they're looking for content. The advertising is sort of shifting away from just pure impressions at any cost to impressions that have real engagement value. And there's companies out there that are measuring that engagement value on video by time viewed or time spent. ShareRocket obviously measures that engagement in true social engagement types. But I think when you position this to a traditional broadcaster, the value of engagement to an advertiser, it all starts to click. I think if you just talked about engagement on what's the value of your audience on Facebook talking about your 10 o'clock news stories, I don't think it resonates nearly as strongly.
What's the future? A lot of people are talking about artificial intelligence and what's happening with fake news. Is there an important role for local journalists, national journalists to play in exercising influence?
Well, I think that local journalists, whether they're newspaper journalists or broadcasters, they have a very unique perspective to offer the advertising community. Just a few weeks ago, Google delisted about 4,000 questionable publishers that, advertising dollars are now trying to compete for a much smaller publisher audience. And, we think that local broadcasters, local publishers represent some of the safest harbors for advertising dollars, because they have a 50 to 75, in the case of some newspapers, 100+ year relationship in their communities. And I think that, if TV stations and local newspapers can really get that message out to advertisers that they have a unique relationship with their local markets, I think that's a powerful one, and sort of cuts through the clutter of, what's viewability and what is a quality publisher that I should associate my brand with.
ShareRocket is real time. It's mobile.
It is. We have clients that keep the screens up, our diagnostic dashboards up all day. We also have clients that like to see our data at the end of the beginning of the day for the previous day's activity. So we provide email reports. We call them social overnights. We also have dashboards that live in our clients' newsrooms that are big 60-inch plus screens that have a leaderboard type of a view that scrolls through the leaders in the market, the leaders at the station. We're about to launch a new mobile app that's going to be directed specifically towards journalists, that's going to launch this summer, and it will allow them to get even a deeper dive into their performance against their peers in their market. So we try to provide a lot of different tools based on the same technology.